Hey, are you a white belt that trains mostly in the gi but wants to get better at your no-gi game? This is how you're gonna do it. Most of the time when people get grips on you, you're training in the gi, they get lapel grips and sleeve grips, okay? Which can be extremely frustrating if you don't have something to grab on, okay? So the way that I get these grips for me while training no-gi is I make a C grip, like a crab claw, right at the wrist here, in between his hand and his forearm. There's a nice little hole here where your hand fits perfectly into. My other hand, I like to use a collar tie, okay? Here. So I go 4 fingers over the neck, forearm in his chest, and control his head here, okay? These are the ways that you can replicate your no-gi grips, okay, from your gi grips. Generally speaking, the difference between starting in a gi and a no-gi match, or rolling in gi and no-gi, is the initiation is always gonna be for lapels, almost always. So if we're in gis, the first thing he's gonna do is start grabbing my lapels so he can control me. All right. Whereas in no-gi, you want to focus a little bit more on head control and neck control and distance and space. In the gi, you always almost want to get close enough in each other's range so that we can get grips. Whereas in its no-gi, it's almost the opposite. Generally speaking, you start a little lower, and I always personally am going to start touching his head right away. Okay. I touch his head, okay, to make sure that I have range, and I will get into my collar ties here. That's the best way that you can start your no-gi transition as far as grips is concerned. Touching the head, okay, pulling the head down, okay, and getting your collar grips, okay? Those are a good way to replace the traditional lapel fight. For example, here's something you can use from inside your guard, transitioning from gi to no-gi as far as applying a technique with changing up your grips. So you have a basic scissor sweep. Coles gets 4 fingers inside, he gets a good cuff sleeve grip, he hips out, okay, brings me onto him and scissors his legs, okay? So how we're going to adapt this to no-gi is we're going to apply the same grips that we did standing. Collar tie and wrist control, crab claw, C grip, okay? So I can start from my closed guard here. I'm going to reach up, strong collar tie on Cole's neck, okay? And then you can get either C grip thumb facing you or C grip thumb facing them. And then all the mechanics remain pretty much exactly the same. Unlock my feet, hip out, pull him onto me, and scissor my legs, okay? Another basic application of changing your gi grips, lapel grips to no-gi grips is, for example, from Turtle, something I use instead of the clock choke. So we have the clock choke here. Traditionally, I'm in Turtle, I open up his lapel, okay? I get his hand and I run forward to finish my clock choke. Now, when you don't have the lapels, you don't have the luxury of pulling off a choke like this. So oftentimes what I do instead is I'll reach through, same thing, wrist control, and instead of reaching through to this lapel, I reach all the way across to this far side shoulder. When I reach to this far side shoulder, I open my elbow up, okay, and I get my arm underneath his chin. Pull my hand out and then lean forward, head to the ground, and finish my rear naked choke. In many ways, any way you can access the neck, the same way you would with lapels, you can access it with your traditional Mataleon grips. One of the ways that I transition from no-gi grips to gi grips and back and forth, for example, if I have a big no-gi competition coming up and I still find myself training in gi classes, I will always prioritize not grabbing gi grips. Okay, it's going to be frustrating. However, you have to repress the want and the instinct to grab the gi grips. The more that you can work around someone having grips on you, but you not having good gi grips on them, I actually think helps you progress your no-gi in many ways. If you're having problems, make sure you're going to develop breaking people's grips and then using those grips for your no-gi advances, no-gi attacks. Like I said before, it's going to be frustrating. But I think you focusing on not using the gi grips will pay dividends when it comes time for you to enter or do your no-gi competition. I hope these tips help you. Benefits of training gi and no-gi. I'm a big proponent of both. I think if you do jiu-jitsu, you should train both. Training in the gi gives you, I think, in much better ways, a greater defense in many ways. If you train in the gi, people only need one hand to choke you. Whereas in most of the time in no-gi, they need both hands. So if you can defend with one hand and not get choked, I think your defense goes up in many ways as it transitions to no-gi. Also, I think training in the gi gives you a very strong perspective and awareness of grips and how those grips apply to different hierarchies of control. For example, grabbing the knees, grabbing the hips, controlling someone's elbow. These are all things that are intuitive, I think, when you train no-gi, but I think they are really exemplified when you train in the gi and you're able to grab a hold of something. Also, as it relates to self-defense, if you train jiu-jitsu, you should be training jiu-jitsu not just for sport, but hopefully for some realm of self-defense. You never know where you're gonna be, especially we live in Southern California. You never know if something's gonna happen at the beach or at the nightclub. Someone's wearing a suit, someone's wearing board shorts. So I think if you train just one or the other too much, you pigeonhole yourself in many ways to how that applies also in the real world. If you're one of those guys that trains only no-gi and then someone grabs a handful of your collar, you may be caught off guard in something that you may have thought was not the case. And then vice versa. If you're at the beach and you're an only gi guy and you fight a guy with no shirt on and board shorts, you're gonna have a rude awakening as to your ability to control someone without being able to grab their clothes. I hope these tips help. Go train.